Welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of Comic Book Ketchup. We're coming to you live. We're changing things up a little bit. We still have things for our Patreon listeners to do in which they can vote for some of the comics that we cover. Today, we're covering four, including an entire trade paperback. Andy, how's it going?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm amazing, man. I am ready to get into this tonight. So why don't we just go ahead and do it? So, Andy, your first pick of the night was the Deep Cuts trade paperback. What can you tell me about this? This is by Kyle Higgins, Ramon Perez, and plenty more.
Yeah, and Joe Clark, I think, is a co-writer on that as well. Um, yeah, so I was on vacation last week, and I was looking for some bigger things to kind of catch up on, and this grabbed my eye. So it is an anthology of stories about fictional jazz musicians, but it takes us through sort of the a realistic history of jazz in America. And the characters are intentionally sort of on the fringes of the jazz scene, right? So they're not replacing in the actual history, folks like Louis
Lee
Armstrong
Armstrong.
or
Yeah.
right, or Miles Davis or anybody like that. They're meant to exist alongside of them as people who are just sort of just barely making it, or uh, you know, uh, not understood in the time, that kind of thing. Um, and it's a really interesting look at American history in general of the 20th century. It tracks through pretty much. I think that the first story is shortly after the turn of the century in New Orleans, and it tracks all the way up through like the 80s or so. So each issue focuses on a different character and a different time period. So you're kind of advancing through different eras of jazz, starting with that sort of New Orleans parade and club scene, and folks just sort of playing in different venues or wherever they can play, and all these different combos are just sort of forming spontaneously as different people want to just kind of have a chance to play together. And then you get up into more formal things like bop and different traditions, different groups of musicians, and then all the way up to by the end you've got folks with record deals, and there's one of the artists is kind of dealing with the jazz fusion of disco and rock and pop and jazz, and how does he feel about that, and is that still jazz? How does that factor into his sort of understanding of his connection to the tradition and so forth? So you've got all these kinds of questions about art, about music, and like I said, a real look at history as well, and especially history for people who were perhaps a little bit more marginalized in society. So a number of these musicians are black, or and there's some women, and so that's all part of it too. Just a story of people who are both on the margins of society in general and kind of on the margins of this music scene as well. And yeah, so I thought it was really interesting. It and the art is changed. There's different artists for each issue, and so it reflects both the historical setting and also kind of the style of music. And so it's obviously difficult to capture the sound of jazz in a comic medium, right? I think there was somebody who said that writing about music is like dancing about architecture, and so drawing about jazz is maybe a little bit better, but it still isn't exactly the same thing. But I think that the art goes a long way to kind of capturing just sort of the feel of the different eras, the feel of the different sounds, what was the aesthetic that they were trying to capture with the music, and what kind of aesthetic visually would go along with that.
Okay. Yeah. So you said it takes place over a large amount of time. Does it end around the 70s? Is that about what you were suggesting?
Yeah,
With the
70s and
fusion of
80s exactly. Yeah.
okay, nice. Okay, so I mean, other locales besides New Orleans, was there Harlem, California thrown in?
Yeah, all of those.
Okay,
They're
that's what I remember
I
from
think
studying jazz history. Is
right.
those
Yeah, so
three regions?
right. Yeah, so the first story is centered in New Orleans. The second story is about a woman who is writing for Broadway but wants to get into writing jazz music, and so it's sort of the crossover of vaudeville and Broadway and jazz and all of that. And then we get in. There's some other stories in the Harlem scene in the later like 30s and 40s. And then the final one of the final stories or maybe two of them are in California, and then the last one is also kind of international, right? So this guy who's on this fusion recording contract is touring internationally with this act that he's got together. So kind of think like late Miles Davis kind of experimentation and fusion, that sort of thing is about the span of what it covers.
And who's distributing this one?
Yeah, so it's an Image.
Image, okay.
Yeah, it's published by Image. It came out in single issues end of last year, beginning of this year, and then the trade came out just, I think, a month or two ago.
All right, excellent. Well, anything else you want to add for Deep Cuts?
No, I think I've jazz history, but tried to listen to various jazz musicians over the years, and so, but it was still an opportunity to learn some more, and hopefully other folks will find that as well. But yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more to be able to maybe speak a bit more in granular detail about its connections to real world jazz. But yeah, I still think both as a comic and as a music fan, it's worth giving a look.
Yeah, it looks fascinating. It's something I never would have thought of as being written in a comic form. Like as you said earlier, like can imagine like looking at pictures about music, but sounds like a lot of fun. And I love studying history, and jazz has always been one of those things. It's never been my favorite thing, but I've always, when it fits on in the background, it's like, I'm my head to the beat. Love it. So, all right, we'll move on from there to The Ultimates 2. This is by Denise Camp. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And Andy, you have any thoughts on this one before we go through a little plot summary of what's going on?
Yeah, I just, I talked about the first issue the last time I was on, and so I was excited for this issue, and yeah, it's an interesting, as the previous iteration of Ultimates, it's a good opportunity to, visit familiar characters and settings, but kind of remix them in interesting ways and see new folks brought in. And so I think that'll be the fun of this, at least first few issues of Ultimates, is kind of putting the team together, seeing who else we meet, how they're the same, how they're different. And such is always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I ultimately like this issue, but I have some gripes with it as far as so basically what happens in this issue, listeners, is our Ultimates team is assembled. They're going to be our Avengers of the new 6160 is the universe now, I think. And you've got Time Displaced Captain America, of course. You've got Tony Stark as Iron Lad. You've got the newly created Wasp and Ant-Man, Lady Sif, and who am I forgetting? I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, do you remember?
Did you say Thor?
Thor is also here as well. And it's them in a world where, hey, the Maker has changed things incredibly to the point where he has altered history to remove heroes and villains from it. Outside of a select few, he's made part of his council. Now that he's no longer really in the picture as much as he was before, it's time for the heroes to come back. And America no longer exists in the same way. Now, America, if I'm remembering correctly from the comic, is like a combined North, Central, South America kind of spiel. Even we invade the White House in this issue, and that's no longer where the president lives. That's no longer where the seat of control is for this new American nation. And we have Midas here. Midas, of course, being a villain from our 616, who has become a more rich industrialist and has taken what is left of the Iron Man armor for his own. And through the background this whole time, we have Captain America getting caught up on history. And it's him seeing flashes of things, how the Maker changed things, how the JFK assassination still happened. The Maker got to the moon early. He confronted Galactus. We have mutants striking for their rights. And those things I'm like fine on. But then as we keep going a little forward, we get to things like, the Punisher being this source of evil in the world. And I have my own issues with Frank, but I have a lot of issues with how Marvel is treating him right now, which some of it I understand. I don't know if you heard about the recent controversies around his character and his symbol.
Some, yeah.
Yeah. It's been misappropriated by people who have, especially law enforcement, who have no business using him as a symbol because Frank ultimately is a sign that our official systems don't work. So for them to take that symbol on is uh, destroying everything they're supposed to stand for, which I do agree with that. But the idea of like getting rid of the Punisher at all, getting rid of his symbol, I don't agree with. And the fact that they kind of make him a villain in this world, I'm not big on. And then of course it's kind of like a which you're doing a lot of things through images, which are pretty well done for the most part. The art is extremely great, but it's that whole. It feels like that's what I'm looking for here. You have that older person in your life who just says like, "Well, this is how things should be," and they aren't really caught up with what is actually reality. They just it's like, "Hey, these things are bad," and instead of like having a nuance about it, they just talk about how bad it is.
Hmm.
That's kind of the sense I got from this. Not that I'm saying that they're wrong to say some of these things. Like, hey, we should be talking about how we treat uh, people coming into this country. We should be talking about how we love our neighbor and everything like that. But it's just a little hokey to me, and not in a fun comics hokey. It was more like preachy hokey. But then we get to the whole thing of like Steve wanting to bring back America, and it comes into a reveal that what Midas has been using is actually a displaced America Chavez. So was it a hokey line at the end that he's saving America, Chavez? Yes, but I liked it. What did you think about this issue overall?
Yeah, I was I was surprised that there wasn't more. So they're using America Chavez as a power source, and they're Midas has been exploiting her, and the implication is that there's a physical toll and probably a psychological toll as well, and all this has been done without her consent. And so the the natural hero thing is to free her from that and rescue her from that experience. And there's a passing reference to, but if you just shut down the power, like lots of things depend on the power, and other people's lives will be endangered. There's a significant cost, and I was surprised that there wasn't more of a, do the needs of the
Follow up?
few outweigh the needs of the many kind of
Yeah,
debate there. Especially since they so explicitly kind of hit on it. If it was just kind of implied, okay, fine. Sometimes you just have to accept in these superhero stories that the world, that things get fixed a lot easier than they can in the real world. But they called it out and then didn't really address it, and it left me wondering if there will be ramifications in future issues that we haven't seen the plot yet,
could be.
or if maybe they're just kind of a miscommunication or something. But yeah, I was a little surprised at how quickly that was just kind of like, nope, we're unplugging her, and she needs to be set free, and we're like you say, we're saving America. And that
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is a cute little visual gag or implied pun. Um, and I've been fascinated by the way that America Chavez kind of turns up everywhere anymore. I didn't really I read that first series, the first miniseries where she debuted, and there wasn't really a whole lot there, and so it's kind of surprising just how much people have gotten from her and how much she clicked, that so many people have come back to her. But she they've added to her character, and they have made her an interesting character, and so I had no problem with seeing her here. But it still just kind of
yeah.
surprised me, like that's from such humble beginnings, such a big addition to the Marvel landscape has come.
Yeah, I was interested by her. Oh, sorry, my internet was cutting out, so you were still talking. Am I the problem or is Andy the problem? We shall find out. Can you hear me? Nope. Oh, this is great content, guys. There we go. Hey, oh, see your image. Don't hear a voice. That's weird. Yeah, I apologize for all the audio and internet issues, guys. It's one of those things that just kind of happens every now and then. So hopefully this gets fixed in a little bit, and we'll see what happens. All right, can you hear me now? Interesting. I think I'm unplugged. My end, and that should be fine. It's just a grand joy. Well, might be solving things. We shall see. How's everyone doing tonight? We all doing okay? Uh, Thanks for sticking around with this. Kind of one of those things you just can't control. Not my favorite part of doing any of this. Can you hear me now, Andy?
I can hear you. My
Okay.
big apologies for that technical glitch there. I
Hey,
don't know what happened, but here we are.
it is a-okay. I think I was speaking over you because I thought you had finished, but the internet issue started. So you were talking about America Chavez. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. So I was talking about America Chavez, and I don't know where I left off, but anyways, cool to see her here. And then, yeah, there. I understand your point about there not being a lot of opportunity for nuance in the history lesson that Captain America gets. But I suspect that they will that we'll see more of that. That isn't the last of we've seen of how Captain America is going to interact with the present day. And part of that I'm taking from there's that moment where the kid asks Captain America what the A stands for, which you may or may not recall is a callback to
to
a
the
famous panel in the first
Yep.
Ultimates, which I'm guessing that the fact that they're calling back to that means that Jonathan Hickman has more to say about Steve Rogers and his relationship to present day America and so forth, and that there might be some more perhaps critique or at least engagement with conversation with the previous version of Ultimate Captain America and
Yep.
a new. I'm sorry, I said Jonathan Hickman, but Dennis Camp is the writer here. Keep getting that mixed up, but yeah. Anyway,
It's
that
easy to make.
reference, yeah.
Yeah, I hope for the same. I'm not opposed to this being brought up again. I think this was maybe just not lazy, but just an easier way to introduce these concepts, and then later on they can talk about them more. So I just hope they don't just drop them and say, "Well, I said everything I needed to say." In that case, I will say I would not like that.
Fair enough.
Okay. Anything else on the Ultimates before we head over to X-Men 1?
I'm good.
All right. Now, your bread and butter, the X-Men themselves. Lay it on us, the new status quo, Andy.
Yeah, so it used to be a bigger deal that when you get a new X-Men #1. We've had a few of those in recent years, but it's still kind of an exciting thing, right? I mean, that's still the best-selling comic. Uh, it was an X-Men #1, and so I think that's a pretty big deal. Obviously, the House of X, Powers of 10, and the whole Krakoa area is a tough act to follow, and honestly, I was surprised that this wasn't more of a clean slate. This is very much a continuation. It says a new beginning, but it is also very much from the ashes. It is definitely picking up where the Krakoa story left off, and I think that's good in the sense of people who are invested in that story will find that there's something to latch onto here. They won't find like, oh, it's just all been completely forgotten. We're dealing very on the nose with some things. We're dealing with the actions of Charles Xavier at the end of that story, and the consequences for him. Now we're dealing with the fact that Beast was resurrected during the Krakoa era, but with a mental backup that only extends into the 80s, right? So he has no memories of anything that happened to him post 80s publication time, right? In Marvel time, that was probably only like 3 weeks ago, but and so I think that's beneficial for folks who are looking to kind of keep going with what had come before. But I think it is maybe holding down this from being a bigger splash, right? Because you've got all this continuity baggage that you're dealing with, and it's kind of a downbeat, right? The X-Men, they kind of won, but there's still a big mess to clean up. They paid a great cost, and they're still reaping that. And so it's not as exciting and triumphant of a debut as something like obviously House of X was a big splash, but even thinking back to Grant Morrison, or like Astonishing X-Men #1 with Joss Whedon, and that book, those kind of like big statements of intent, big kind of splashes of we're here and we've got something to say about the X-Men. This is more just like it's day 357 of X-Men dealing with the ramifications of last year's Hellfire Gala. And somebody who's invested in the long-term story of the X-Men, that's fine, but it isn't quite. I think it's going to be harder to market and kind of get people excited about in terms of, hey, this is something new for you to join in.
Don't
so a little bit more about this. Yeah, sure. And that there's probably no when you're following an act like that, there's probably no optimal way to do it, right? It's always going to have some comparison. There's always going to be some drawbacks, but so a little bit more about the story. So this particular team of X-Men is taking up residence in Alaska. We've got different groups of mutants kind of spread out in different parts of the country, and those different books will focus on those different groups. But this is the group that is in Alaska. They seem to be perhaps continuing the direct X-Men mantle most explicitly in the sort of like public relations, kind of what they were doing in New York in the treehouse in the Krakoa era of being sort of the public face of mutants. This feels like, even though they're in a remote part of Alaska, this still kind of feels like they're going to be the public team, the team that comes to participate in superheroing and when the world needs saving and that kind of stuff. But they're also dealing with how do we get along with the locals in this town that's lost industry. It's sort of as a Pittsburgh resident, I can identify with the sort of post-industrial rebuilding kind of nature of the town. Folks trying to figure out the town's identity and all of that. And so the X-Men are kind of going through that too. We just lost our place in the world in a way, and we have to rebuild also. So I think that's an interesting take in terms of that relationship with the civilians in the area. And there is an immediate threat in this issue of a group called the Fourth Wave is not right, but the name didn't make a strong impression. But they're based Fourth School, yes. They're basically the U-Men. They're humans who are modifying themselves to have mutant powers, and so there's some conflict there in terms of their agenda and how they're interacting with other mutants and how they're treating people and so forth. And then there seems to be this shadowy cabal called 3K that is behind the Fourth School or is involved in some way. shades of, if you read the recent Captain America and Winter Soldier thing with they took the shield, and the 5 points of the shield were different things like the revolution and whatever, and there was this shadowy cabal that sat around a round table at the 5 points of the star, and were trying to control the world. And there's a real strong vibe of that to this 3K group, because they sit around it. They're a shadowy cabal that sits around the round table, but there's only 4 of them at the 4 points of the X-Men logo. And they have similarly sort of abstract names. And that's actually, if I have a biggest gripe about this book, it was that you get to the end of the comic and there's a full page QR code where the last page should be. And you scan that QR code to go and read the last page of the comic online.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah. And so
I was so confused reading that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It was an odd thing, and I'd kind of gotten a heads up, so I knew, okay, I should make the effort to go and read this. And so I pull out my phone and scan the QR code and open it up, and it's a it's a full page of art. But it's on my phone, and you can't zoom. You can't do the pinch zoom to blow it up. So it's unreadable on a device like that. So I had to then copy the URL from the browser on my phone, message that to myself so that I could pull it up on my computer so that I could actually read it at scale. And so that really kind of undermined the drama of this reveal of presumably who are going to be the big antagonists for the X-Men for the coming future. I'm sure that I don't know for sure, but I have to imagine that Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman and co, that wasn't their idea. It doesn't feel like it works as a storytelling choice. I'm guessing it's some kind of marketing thing that somebody is trying to do. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what the benefit is supposed to be, because it was literally, they replaced one page of the comic with one page of online reading. Like, it would have taken me the exact same amount of space in the book. And yeah, it just made it harder to read what was ultimately just a normal comics page. Not that I think anybody at Marvel is listening, but yeah, don't do that again. I'm sure there are books at the printers that it's already too late, but yeah, you need to fix the web interface so that you can read it more easily, or just don't do it and just print those pages in the comic or something. But as an experiment, I understand the need to experiment from time to time, but you also got to take the feedback when it doesn't work, and that just did not work. And I think it's unfortunate, because I think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to talk about instead of talking about the actual story and the art and all the positive things that these artists have put together for us.
So you're telling me in the next book Jed MacKay took over, he's introduced another group with multiple members who haven't appeared before, just like he's done in Avengers, and just like he's done in, oh gosh, what was the other one? Just like he just did in Blood Hunt. It's like, I was defending him before him, but now it just seems like that's the thing for him. I'm not against new villains showing up. Is that my understanding? They are new villains, right?
I mean, they are mostly seen in shadow, and they have names that are more like titles. So I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually learn that they are existing characters. But as presented so far, all we know about them, they appear to be a new group, and certainly the name 3K and all that is new lore.
Okay, yeah, it's one of the things I saw as a criticism against them, and I'm enjoying Avengers and Blood Hunt, but it's like, again, third time's the charm. So maybe things turn out differently. So yeah, this issue, now that I especially know there was a page I was missing, it's a QR code. I don't know how I really felt about it. It felt like an awkward introduction to the new status quo. I'm not against the new status quo. I mean, because I knew from the beginning of Powers of X, House of X, that Krakoa was going to fall at some point in time. It's just, you can't have stability in the X-Men's life. So I'm fine with the new status quo. It's just, I don't know. It just felt like we just got people's names awkwardly introduced, like Wolverine. That one section where he's just thinking of every telepath he can think of that's going to be in the issue. Not every telepath they know, but the ones that are going to be in the issue. And Magic and Juggernaut both being a bunch of meatheads. I don't know if I've ever qualified Magic as being like that before. It was kind of weird for me. It's not like I'm focusing on smaller things because ultimately I like this issue,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just little things that kind of take me out of it. And as opposed to other things McKay has done, because I really like him. I love his Black Cat. I love his Doctor Strange. Like I said, early Avengers. I'm loving Blood Hunt right now. Moon Knight. They've been amazing. So I have faith he'll make it better. But this is like a bad first issue for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. It, like I said, it feels more like, Uncanny number 712 than it feels like an X-Men number one. And
Yes.
if you've read all 711 issues that came before, that's not a big deal. What the number isn't the end all be all. But for something that they're promoting as the start of a new status quo, as their big launch, uh, and this book is the only X-Men book coming out this month. There are X titles, but they're
Yes.
staggering the three sort of flagship team books each get their own month to debut, and so this is the only X-Men team book on the shelves for several weeks, and yeah, so it feels like it should have been a little bit more of a splash, a little bit more maybe exciting or positive, a little bit more optimistic. And again, yeah, a little bit less continuity heavy, especially the Beast thing. And maybe I'm overlooking some of the other elements. Um,
That was a wild
but
ride in
yeah,
X Force.
yeah, I was not a fan of that. But
Oof.
that's a conversation for another day. But yeah,
Yes.
to just kind of you know, hey, that character that you like from the cartoon and whatever. I mean,
He's become a monster.
and was just in a movie, however briefly. Right, this is somebody who people know and have associations with, and to try to figure out like why is he acting the way he is? What is he referencing and all? Just uh, didn't feel like the way to launch a number one. And that said, like I said, I am glad that they are following up on that. I'm glad that they're not just kind
Yes.
of pretending like,
Ignoring it.
well, he's now the beast, that you want him to be. Uh, and you can imagine, you can project onto him whatever version of beast you want. They are giving him a very specific characterization that's based on his history that's come
Was it,
before.
was it the
But
New Defenders? That iteration, I think.
yeah, it's something like that. I mean, uh, he went. His first response was to go find Wonder Man. So
Yes.
yeah, I think you're talking about, that kind of New Defenders era, or the Avengers of, like, I
Yeah, it was
can't be
post
any
Avengers,
later than
New
I think the
Defenders.
early '90s,
Okay. Yeah. Well, speaking of
because it.
character interpretations, oh, sorry, do you have something else you wanted to add?
No, 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 go ahead.
What do you think of Magneto's introduction in this
That was also puzzling.
one? Yeah.
Maybe I'm a bad reader. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention during those last few issues, but I'm not sure I'm clear on why he's in a wheelchair, or in some kind of, like, they're clearly going for he's now the Professor X,
Because he just got
and so he's in a
resurrected on
chair.
Morocco.
Right? Is it just that he likes? I mean, is it a Thanos thing? Does he just want to sit in a floating chair?
I
That's fine,
mean,
but
that's a power move.
right. The iconography is clearly he's the new Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
You can't get past that. But maybe it is just he chose to be sitting in that situation, and so uh, maybe I didn't miss anything. But yeah, or maybe that's a mystery that will be unraveled in future issues. That's certainly a
Yeah.
storytelling way to go.
I'd be fine with that.
But yeah, um, I struggle a little bit with that Resurrection Magneto miniseries. I liked I liked a lot of things about X-Men Red, and then that didn't really feel like. I mean, it did feel like a continuation, but it was a lot of just kind of, here are my thoughts about myself, here monologuing. And so, yeah, I'm not sure I really had a strong sense of where Magneto kind of landed post Krakoa. So it didn't. I can believe that this is, Magneto as he is right now, but it did feel like he was really undermining what Cyclops was going to do. So I guess that's my biggest question, is just sort of what is the relationship between Magneto and Cyclops in this setup? Is there a conflict about who's the leader and who's not the leader? What's going on? I'm not really sure there. Speaking of not really sure what's going on, I'm not really sure what happened to Christian. So I'm just going to be talking about X-Men and Magneto.
So
okay, there you are.
My bad. That seminary internet that I pay for with my tuition is not really helping me. So
understood.
Yeah, it's just been a fine episode tonight, guys. Glad we're going live with this one. Like, yeah. When it comes to Magneto, I'm fine with there being like a soap opera drama kind of power struggle between him and Scott, for leadership of the X-Men now that Xavier is in prison. But I'm going to need to see that fleshed out more. And I trust he can do that. It's just kind of awkward, the introduction of this whole power dynamic right now.
Yeah, and I think I expected something a little bit more. Well, if Charles is in prison and Charles was just kind of the villain, he took a strong heel turn. I think I expected, okay, so now it's Magneto's turn to sort of step up and be a little bit more, if not a straight hero, but sort of more of that, conflicted or trying to be the best version of himself kind of Magneto that we saw in X-Men 97 for a bit there. And that, it was kind of suggested by some of what was going on in Resurrection Man.
The internet again. Just having a grand time tonight. Oh, maybe. Can't unmute your guests. They chose to mute themselves. Interesting. And the internet issues continue. Sorry, guys. This has been one of the worst live streams I think we've ever had. It's just one of those things. It's frustrating in the moment. You can't really blame anyone too much. So there we go. Back in action. There's Andy.
Yeah, whatever happened before happened again. But at least this time I knew what to do to fix it faster.
There you go. What are we going to do? All right. Anything on X-Men 1 before we get to our final issue tonight?
I think I've said enough. Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll get into Batman 150. This is done by Chip Zdarsky. Have you been following this run at all? I know we had talked, you didn't have it when we had discussed it.
Right. So one of the things that, I said I was catching up on some trades and things while I was on vacation. One of the things I caught up with was the first collection of the Chip Zdarsky run. It's something I've been meaning to get to. I'd heard good things. So I've read that first 6 issues. That's him and Failsafe. And then I was able to borrow a copy of this to read. And frankly, kind of speaking about number ones and first issues and things, I thought this was a much better first issue than Batman 125. I had the same feeling reading Batman 125. Like, why? Who's dead? Why are they dead? Why isn't Bruce Wayne rich? Like, I missed a lot.
What's
here.
going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I felt perfectly comfortable. Like, okay, no, I mean, that there was the absolute power stuff at the end that I was like, well, I have no idea what's going on here. But the actual main Batman story was a perfectly good standalone, welcome to my take on Batman kind of thing. And I almost felt like that I was reading things out of order because that felt like a better place to start.
Yeah, I'm more of a Marvel guy than the DC guy, so I'm slowly getting back into DC again. I'm caught up with Batman, Detective Comics, Green Lantern, and Flash. I think that's it for right now. So I don't know about absolute power. I read the first issue and I'm like, I really have no context for this. And I too have people in my life who are very graciously able to gift me, at least temporarily, their stuff so I can read them and catch up because can't really do that on a seminary budget. So there's that. But this issue I wanted to talk about because I am so sick and tired of the argument of Batman doesn't care about poor people. Batman doesn't care about the common man. He'd rather force them into a hospital after breaking every bone in his body than, reaching out a hand and lifting up. And I think this is Zdarsky's attempt to fight against that. This
Yeah,
issue was phenomenal to me. The general premise, to those who haven't read it, is there's this small town time crook Teddy who has figured out who Batman is, and so he is trying to like send that out there to like make money off of it. He's learned he's Bruce Wayne. He's learned he doesn't have all the money, everything. So he's going to sell it to the criminal underworld. And he keeps getting told by other thugs, like, "Hey, don't do this. That's a bad idea. You're going to get the wrong people after you." And after he goes through everything, he finds Batman has been following him the entire time, watching him with his estranged wife and son and everything there. And then when he says, it gets to the moment where Batman saves him, they have a talk, and then he chooses not to reveal who Batman is. And Batman gives him a new identity in Metropolis after having revealed he also helped pay for the Teddy's son to get into college because that's what Bruce Wayne does with his money. He's not an idiot. He's not someone who doesn't care about the little man. He's not someone who doesn't care about the poor people he's beating up. Well, guess what? Batman can do both. What was your take on this as someone who's getting reintroduced to some of the elements in the Batman side of things?
yeah. I mean, I agree. It does read like it is an engagement with that online discourse of if Bruce Wayne really cared about people, he would build hospitals or fund this or that. And I get that some of that is people using Batman as a way to express their thoughts about the real world and how real world policing and real world policymaking should happen, and that's fair. But yeah, to say that this is never never something that the comics actually address, or that we never see Bruce Wayne doing exactly those sorts of things, I think is a bit disingenuous. Or it's one of those, if we're going to continue the internet discourse version of it, it's tell me you've never read a Batman story without telling me that you've never read a Batman story. But yeah,
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. I think I mean it's a well-worn trope at this point. The Batman story in which Batman is a background figure, is a shadow. It doesn't really appear except on the margins, and that the story about somebody else, for whatever reason, that works really well with Batman, or maybe it just because it's a part of his world, that's just something that people come back to every now and again. But this is a really good example of it. It's really well done. Yeah, you see Bruce Wayne and Batman doing exactly the things that you would want them to be doing, of looking out for these people, understanding that they there are systemic issues that need to be addressed, understanding that people, yes, make choices, but they make those choices in a context where their options may be limited, and and also recognizing that not everybody who is a quote unquote bad guy in his world is has malicious intent, or is a psychopath or whatever. That they are redeemable, that they can make better choices, can make different choices if given opportunity to do so. And so yeah, I like that take on Batman. I like that story. And I think it really showcases what is interesting about this character, the sort of both sides of how he has to interact with the world.
yeah. I think a lot of the times people forget in that argument too. That's exactly what Thomas and Martha Wayne did. They poured money into the city, trying to make things better, and they were murdered for it. Bruce Wayne does it, and he can also back himself up as Batman.
Right.
Like you said, it's like tell me you've never read a Batman comic before. That that tells you everything you need to know about their opinion. So this issue, I think, is a really great one at like displaying the humanity of Bruce Wayne and Batman, and that whole dualistic sense. Which one is the real mask? Blah blah blah. But of showing how much he cares for the people that hey, like as part of my job of protecting the city, I've got to punch these people in the face. I've got to make sure they can't harm another human being. And but he doesn't end it there. He actually, to people who he actually thinks can reform, he does what he can. The son is like the perfect example of that. Like he tried to go into crime to be like his dad, but he actually sat him down, talked out his issues with him, and helped him get into college. What else is Batman supposed to do if not that?
Right. Right.
There's being a symbol of fear, and there's being also a symbol of hope.
Yeah. And that was one thing that I appreciated about the failsafe story that I read alongside of this was, yes, Batman is holding the city of Gotham and the people of Gotham to high standards and punching them when they get it wrong, but there's nobody who holds up to a higher standard than Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
And you're seeing the lengths to which he goes to hold himself in check in that story. Obviously, it goes wrong. If it didn't, there wouldn't be drama and a story to tell. But
yes,
but at the core there, while I found some of the plot hard to follow and some of the continuity a little bit dizzying, at the core there was a story about no, Batman doesn't have higher standards for anyone than himself, and I think that's a good kind of Batman story as well.
All right. Anything else you want to add for tonight before we wrap up?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Please, if you get a chance, just leave a like, subscribe as well. Leave a comment down below. We really appreciate engaging with you guys. It's a lot of fun. So until next time, see ya.